For the longest time, I felt like I was invisible. I could pass through rooms unnoticed. I could stare at people and get away with it. I could study the parts of their bodies you weren't supposed to look at. Being invisible, I was very free. When folks started to call me Sissy, I figured they must have meant that I reminded them of Sissy Spacek in the movie Badlands, which I had just seen on TV. I took this to be a sign, and from that point on, I decided I should model myself more on Sissy Spacek in that fine film. One day, when I was 12, there was a big storm. In the middle of all the thunder and lightning, I heard a small quacking noise come from outside the front of our house. I opened the door, and there in all the rain was a baby duck standing on the doorstep. Nobody could figure out where the baby duck came from. There was no river where we lived. There was no water at all. And the baby duck was alone. I took this to be a sign, picked the duck up, and carried it inside. I called the duck Fred, even though I didn't know if it was a boy duck or a girl. The baby duck would sit on my foot, and I'd walk around the house with it perched on my foot. I taught the duck to swim in a wash basin. It followed me everywhere. I'd lay down on the floor on my back, and it would climb up my ears and sit on my mouth, its little webbed feet resting on my teeth. Pretty soon, the people I lived with, a strange woman who kept insisting she was related to me, and a man who later became just a photograph in a frame that the woman moved around the house, said that we couldn't keep a duck in our home. The soon-to-be photograph in a frame took me to one side and said, "Look, Sissy, it has to go to the farm outside town. It's only fair on the duck." I said, "But the duck is the only thing I ever loved." I went out into the front garden and continued to play with my hula hoop as though nothing was wrong. But the photograph and the woman who was convinced she was related had their way, and Fred was taken to the farm, and I cried and cried and cried for weeks. And every time I cried, I ran to the mirror to see what I looked like in such distress. Gosh, I looked like hell. Even though I was in extreme pain, even then, I had a healthy sense of self-detachment that would later carry me through life. There was no other ducks, just chickens, thousands of chickens. Everywhere you looked, a sea of Rhode Island red, a moving blanket of identical birds, all born with the knowledge that one day they'd be oven ready with a little plastic thermometer sticking out their sides. It was a grim place. What was Fred gonna do there? Fred was a wild bird. A bird is a bird is a bird, said the man in the frame, and that was that. The baby duck grew up and lived with chickens. Pretty soon it started to think it was another chicken. It didn't want to be excluded, so it walked like a chicken. It scratched the ground with its feet like a chicken. It even made a sound like a chicken, more like a cluck than a quack. It blended right in. They accepted it as one of their own. The chickens were terrible flyers. The duck was a good flyer, but the duck didn't fly because the chickens didn't fly. The duck never swam in the pond because the chickens didn't like the water. Meanwhile, as I was getting older, parts of me were becoming visible. Outside of my control, new parts of personality began to appear. I soon realized that more and more, the parts of me that started to appear weren't what people want to look at. I was sure there must be something wrong with me because I wasn't like the people around me. Even though I was sissy, I started to change myself so I could become invisible again. I learned to change color. I learned to change shape. I learned quickly to become whoever I was talking to. I learned how to disappear. Every now and then I called the farm to see how the duck was doing. The farmer said, "Look, it's been a few years. It can't be that upset anymore. Why don't you come over and see the duck yourself?" So I went over to the farm. When I got there, I was shocked. Fred had become real twitchy, like he'd been drinking too much coffee. He was trying to crow in the morning. He was trying to lay eggs. This duck was a mess. I took this to be a sign and decided it was time for both me and Fred to get out of town. So I burned down our house, just like them said. I mean, they kept telling me I was sissy and stole a car and went driving with the duck sitting in the passenger seat. Poor Fred looking out the window of the car, still going cock-a-doodle-doo from the effects of the farm. I said, honey, I know how you feel. And for a moment, I wished that Fred had lips. Eventually, I found a stretch of water 30 miles from town. A whole flock of duck were passing through and resting on the water. I stopped the car and carried Fred to the side of the lake. When he saw the other ducks, he couldn't quite figure out what they were, but he soon caught on. I yelled to him, "Go on, Fred, be what you are. Honey, you are a duck. And one day, if folks don't get it together, I might even be Carrie." Fred flew in the air for the first time, and the wind caught his wings. And even though I was on the ground, I could sense his exhilaration as he united with the wild sky where he belonged. And after resting a while myself to take in the emotion of it all and ponder my own freedom, I got in my stolen car and went looking for my own kind of garbage man, who indeed might resemble James Dean.